I went through like 3 priests on my journey to Orthodoxy, not not out of choice, but, I was undergrad college in Los Angeles, so there was the church there, but I was going to Grace Community, which was John MacArthur. That was my church, as a Protestant. And then, when I would visit, I was dating this girl who I ultimately married, but her family was in Santa Barbara, so I had a relationship with her priest. And then I moved up to Sacramento for graduate school. And it was then that I had 2 more priests at a Greek Orthodox church. It was only then when I was in grad school that I started trying to go to a Greek Orthodox church full time. So the priest that I really connected with was the assistant priest, um, who arrived a week after I got there. And he was a convert, actually. And he went to Greece to go to seminary. Um, and his spiritual father was Elder Aimilianos of Simonopetra, okay? Who, there are so many books now coming out about him, and he will be canonized a saint. I just say that unequivocally. He will be. He's a saint. Um, and that's not just my, thoughts. That's really the consensus of the church. It's just, it'll happen. It'll happen soon, I'm sure.
Mhm.
Um, whenever it happens, doesn't matter. He's a saint. Um, so imagine, here I am, I'm not even Orthodox at this point, and I'm sitting, in my priest's house, and he goes, hey, Doug. So my name was Douglas, okay, and I was given the name Photios uh, when I entered the church. My priest, he chose a name for me. He found out that Douglas meant darkness, so he gave me the name the opposite, light.
Really?
Okay,
Oh my
yeah,
gosh.
yeah.
Okay.
Um, so he goes, "Hey, Doug, have you ever met a spiritual dynamo before?" And I'm like, "Spiritual dynamo?" And I said, "Yeah, you, Father." He goes, "Oh, please. I need a real spiritual dynamo." Like, "No, you, Father." Because I thought my priest was, very spiritual, right?
Mhm.
And he goes, "Oh, no. I mean a real spiritual dynamo, somebody who knows your sins before you confess." And I said, "Really? There are people who are like that?" He goes, "Yeah. That's my spiritual father, who's really your spiritual father. I'm just keeping you warm until you get to go see him." I was
Okay.
like, "Whoa, okay. I got to go to Mount Athos and see my spiritual dynamo father." Okay. So, it took me, let's see, my gosh, how many years later was that? 5 years? I don't know exactly. Finally, I'm on my first trip to Mount Athos. And that's the only place I want to go, Michaela. Simonopetra to see Elder Aimilianos.
Okay.
I was on Mount Athos for a month and I never made it there. Can you imagine? The only place I intended to go and I never got there. And I was on the Holy Mountain for a month.
How did that
It's
happen?
absolutely insane. Okay. So my very first day on Mount Athos, I meet St. Paisios. And
Okay.
I was with a group of friends. And I said to St. Paisios, I said, "You know what, Yanada, what are we to do about spiritual fathers in America?" This was 1988. Now, mind you, we had no Greek Orthodox monasteries at this point. Okay. So I said, "What are we to do about spiritual fathers in America?" And he says to me, he goes, "You know what?" He said, "People will travel all around the world to find a brain surgeon or a heart surgeon who will heal their body." He said, "If people are willing to travel all around the world to find a brain surgeon or heart surgeon heal their body, which is mortal, how much more willing should you be to travel around the world to find someone who will heal your soul?"
Wow.
And immediately I'm thinking, wow, I guess I go to Mount Athos every 6 months, every
Yeah.
year, right? As often as I can. Okay. And really, it was through his prayers. I know it was through his prayers, looking back. I never made it to Simonopetra. I ended up being led to Philotheo. Philotheo, I had no intention of going there. Philadelphia was where Elder Ephraim was. And
Okay.
in 7 years, Elder Ephraim is coming to America
Back
to
then, right?
establish all of our Greek Orthodox monasteries. But he was just in the beginning stages. He actually, while I was there, he left to go to America. He was traveling around and doing confessions in the United States and Canada and so forth. But he was planting seeds, and then ultimately they came in 1993 um, to basically, do this miracle. You think of what he was able to do. He's just a monk. He's not a He's not a billionaire, right? Many times over. No, it's just all the grace of God that now we have all of these Greek Orthodox monasteries. Uh, so I didn't get to see Elder Aimilianos personally until 2 years later, when I got back to Greece. I was now a priest assigned to a parish in Thessaloniki. Archbishop Iakovos of blessed memory was very kind to me, and I had written in, when you graduate seminary, they have you fill out all these questions and answer them and so forth. And I just wrote in there that my desire was, if possible, to go to Greece and be a priest there because I wanted to be exposed to the culture, to understand, the language better, but most especially just being around the people in that environment.
Yeah.
And I wanted to go to Mount Athos. Um, so I finally got to go see Elder Aimilianos. And the night before I'm going to see him, a monk comes to my room and he goes, hey, the Unit is going to see you in the morning and he'll pick you up at 9 o'clock. So I said, okay. And at that moment, I'm thinking, mm, you know, um, you should do a confession. I really wasn't there to go to confession. I was really there just to ask him questions about all these things that had happened to me. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted his advice. But I thought, I'm going to do a confession. So I wrote, and he doesn't speak any English. So I had to write everything. I made this list in Greek. And my Greek's not perfect, trust me. Okay. It was better then than it is today.
Yeah.
So I wrote down my confession and I like about 7 things. I had it in my pocket. And he comes and gets me and he takes me to his office in the monastery. And I remember just thinking, oh, he's got an office. Like, why wouldn't he have an office? Okay.
Yes.
But this very holy man, right? So I'm sitting across his desk and he starts the conversation by asking me, how is how's the priest, in California, how's his family, so on and so forth. And then all of a sudden he switches gears and he starts to go down my list. Mind you, my list is in my pocket. Okay.
Oh.
And he starts in and he says, Father, men and women, we're different, aren't we? Men and women, we're different, aren't we? And I'm like, yes, Yanada. And he goes, but women, their body's constantly changing, isn't it? They have their cycle, their hormones. Goes, it's constantly in flux. Isn't that true? Mm-hmm. Do we men have that? I said, no, we don't. He goes, exactly. He goes, so women, they have every excuse, but we men, we have no excuses. And so I'm like, yes, Yanada.
Interesting.
So he goes on and on and on and on talking about men and women.
Mm-hmm.
But what he's really doing is he's describing me and my relationship with my wife.
Yeah.
Okay. So the very first sin I'll just share with I had on my list was arguing with my wife. Okay.
Yes.
And then he goes down to number 2. He just switches gears. He goes, Father, he says, when you go back to America, and here's the funny thing is that I didn't know I was going back to America for sure, because it's crazy that my bishop and the diocese was going through hoops in order to get me to be able to stay
Mm.
permanently in Greece. Okay. So he goes, when you go back to America, he goes, you need to teach about the church fathers. I said, okay. So he goes on and on and on talking about the importance of the fathers. And he says, but nobody can begin to understand the fathers until they understand the New Testament. Okay. So then he goes on and on and on talking about the importance of the New Testament. Then he says, but nobody can begin to understand the New Testament until they understand the Old Testament.
Okay.
Okay. So sin number 2 was that when I went to Greece, I had some books on the Old Testament that I'd taken with me, and I hadn't cracked a book yet.
Okay.
And I was in a parish, and my wife, her Greek skills are not so good. Okay, so every evening when I would come home, it's like, here's the baby, and you're spending time with me, and so we would go on walks. Thessaloniki has this place, like a big, huge boardwalk alongside the ocean. They call it the Palalia. So every night we would take the baby and walk and whatnot. So I wasn't reading. And so
Yeah.
so he says that. And then he starts in on number 3. As soon as he hits number 3, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm sitting across from the spiritual dynamo. He's going down my list. And I said, Yerada, you're going down my list. And he looks at me like, what? And then he kept
Wow.
going. Okay. Now, mind you, here I am being told my sins. Okay. Michaela, I've never felt love like this in my entire life.
Yeah.
I felt love pounding out of him, smashing me like tidal waves. I thought I was on the beach and I was being smashed repeatedly by tidal waves of love. It was unbelievable. And then he begins to answer my questions without me asking them. And I just melted. And I actually told him, I know this is crazy, but this is what I did. I said to him, Yana, I don't want to go anywhere. I just want to stay with you. And he looks at me and he says, Yati, what for? I'm like, what for? I said, because I'm experiencing Christ right here, right now with you. And then he says these words, which just echo in my heart forever. He goes, Pedimu. I'll say it in Greek, then I'll translate it. He goes, Pedimu. Christos είναι παντού. He says, my child, Christ is everywhere. And as soon as he said that, in my head, I'm thinking, theoretically. Okay.
Right.
But in your presence, he is right here. It's because of his intense love for Christ, for his desire to not do his will, but God's will. This is a transformation that takes place through struggle to give up our will to do God's will. How can he know my sins? Is there like a little angel that kind of invisibly pulled out of my pocket to let him see? Right? No, he has denied himself. He doesn't want to say a word unless God gives it to him.